Chuck. What do you have for us, sir?
Okay, from the sublime to a double shot of the sublime to the ridiculous. Okay, this show actually stuck around for a while and has fairly successful run. It went from 1976 to 1978 on NBC. Then continued shooting in syndication until 1980. But the first season. No, well, go ahead and tell you the show. If something like this is a game show of sorts, and if uh, if if
I, th- I think
match
this is
game was too cerebral for you or too nuanced for you,
Hollywood Squares went over my head.
yeah, if Hollywood Squares was a bit much, well, there was the Gong Show. And the Gong Show was created by Chuck Barris. And although the first season, weirdly enough, there were two iterations that ran concurrently, and one had Chuck Barris hosting it. The other had weirdly enough Gary Owens hosting it. He did it for about a season, and Gary Owens, you're basically talking about the quintessential like old school announcer, with a big sonorous voice, and
Right.
he's the guy who's quintessentially just very very old school and stodgy, but kind of in on the joke. But the show kind of becoming a big deal around that time, and my mom was always kind of the mentality that I really like the one hosted by Gary Owens. It's almost kind of like a legit talent show. They actually
Right.
show. Okay, this as far as a talent show, basically the formula was, you had these three celebrity panelists, these three celebrity judges. You'd have people like Artie Johnson, Jamie Farr, J.P. Morgan, who I guess prior to doing the Gong Show was a singer of some kind of renown, I guess.
I'd never heard of her except for the Gong Show.
Who named herself
I've
after
never heard of
the
her.
banker? I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
assuming as well.
Yeah, Jay
Y-A-E.
But
Oh, is that how she spelled it? Okay.
yeah, who I think post the show was kind of famous for ripping off her top on the show. And
She was on a couple Hollywood Squares too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when they did the Gong Show movie, they showed that sequence unedited. So
yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
God, I got
that's
it
a
back
whole
then.
thing, the Gong
Yeah.
Show movie. But
Well, hope you'll tell us a little about it. But go ahead with the show.
well, the show ran and started off as almost kind of a semi-legit talent show. As it went on, it just kind of the wheels came off, or it just kind of went off the rails. Where you get these acts, there were some people who we know now. There were people like Paul Rubens, aka Pee Wee Herman, and John Paragon, who were both with the Groundlings at the time, doing these crazy acts where they're dressed up in ludicrous outfits, doing the big shoe dance, and doing lounge style singing. You had there were a few kind of people who became known, but a lot of these there were a lot of legit people trying to get some kind of cash prize. There was always some kind of nominal cash prize. I read that the biggest one was about $700, so kind of low on the prize scale. But the celebrity panel would watch these acts, and if they didn't like them, they would hit a gong, and which is basically like rejecting the act, and the act would have to stop. And they were kind of raw off the show. The other ones would be judged on the numbers system. They'd all get somewhere up to 10 points. And if you got up to 10 points, you were pretty good and you had a chance of winning the prize. Many of the acts, you'd have legit singers who would come out and they'd sing, they'd do well or they wouldn't. You'd have the occasional, I guess, kind of like American Idol kind of thing where someone came on thinking they could sing and they really couldn't, and they get gonged, and they, occasionally you'd have a person cry. You have people come on with the express purpose of getting gonged, and they do this some kind of like one I remember legit was some guy who popped out of a box dressed like a giant cootie, and he'd flail around the stage. And he did that until he got gonged. And there were just all kinds of ludicrous acts like that. Eventually, you got these side characters who kept appearing. You got this guy called the Unknown Comic, who went on to have something of a career. And some comic ran out with a bag over his head, and he was just screaming terrible jokes. And
screaming out one-liner jokes that were old when vaudeville still.
They're old when Henny Youngman stole them, Right. But then you'd have that. There was a guy called Gene the Dancing Machine, who was actually like a stage hand, would come out and kind of shuffle around the stage and dance to some boogie number, and everyone backstage would just throw weird props at him, and that would usually be the point where they cut to a commercial. And it was always acted like it was special that he was appearing, and it was so great that he was appearing. The guy really couldn't dance, and it was basically an excuse to throw a lot of stuff on stage, but it became kind of just part of the flavor of the show. And so it kind of chugged along after a while, just barely even looking like a talent show. And
it was pretty chaotic from what I remember.
It was pretty chaotic.
Yeah, it kind of evolved, I would say, into just 100% shtick from start to finish.
Yeah, it seemed to after a while, And which I was just kind of all about it. It's kind of like, wow, it's like a surrealist game show or something. But Chuck Barris, they did the Gong Show movie, which is pretty much centered around Chuck Barris having a nervous breakdown and trying to deal with the show, get back with the show again. And you see all the outtakes from the show. You see JP Morgan, busting out her business live on camera. And I'd say not all. As a fan of the show, I liked it. It didn't do terribly well, was not terribly well received. Some of the jokes land. I would go as far as to say, I don't know.
Yes.
But some of the jokes land.
Not a big percentage.
Yeah. For me, it was about 50-50, but I'm kind of an extremist in that case. Chuck Barris himself is a real interesting character. He was actually some kind of crazy showbiz impresario. He created a number of game shows, most of which were quote unquote legit game shows. He wrote the song Palisades Park, which was like originally done by, I have it written down here, Freddie Cannon. And but he was he did a bunch of things like that. I've heard that he wrote Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini, but I've never seen any verification on that.
You never know, though.
Someone told me that at one point.
Seems like he was a little young to have written that, but then again, I don't really know how old he was when he did the Gong Show.
Yeah.
So. What about the CIA exploits? Were they real, or what is your?
Oh, yes. Then there was that. Okay, so he wrote an autobiography called Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, where, among other things, he claimed to have been a secret agent, and that a lot of that's been called into question. But it was made into a movie in 2002 by George Clooney, who just probably correctly pegged the fact that just the outrageousness of the story kind of trumps the fact that it may not be factual.
Right.
Did Sam Rockwell play him? Is that correct?
Sam Rockwell played him. And
so what about this Gong Show movie you alluded to?
I briefly mentioned that. Like I said, not all the jokes landed.
Okay.
And
so did it do well? I mean, did you go see it in the theater or what? What do you? What's your
I think
experience with it?
Yeah, it was in the theater.
Dog.
Yeah, it was in the
Okay.
theaters in 1980, and maybe the first movie we've ever had based around a television game show.
Yeah,
Like that.
Far from the last, I'm sure.
Yeah.
yeah, died like a dog, I believe. Panned by everybody. And so that was the story
Look
behind
who's
that.
in the house.
Woo!
Woo!
Who is this lovely lady? I missed you.
Hi.
Hey, have you met everyone here?
I don't
Briggy?
think we've met.
Keith Howell, you have not met.
Yep.
This man up here with the Kolchak shirt is our panel moderator, one of our co-founders.
Howdy.
Oh, hello, panel moderator. I am Briggy, aka Funky Lollipop. How are you?
All right.
Okay.
And you have met Justin and Chuck.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
You have met these two nice men when we did Black Cinema.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That was great.
Okay.
I enjoyed that.
I think he's the only one you had not previously met.
Yeah, I heard about you. They were really not very complimentary, but I'm
Yeah,
going to be the
I
final
can
judge of
imagine.
that.
I can imagine.
Thanks a lot. No.
Well, no secrets kept here.
That's true. I said that earlier myself.
It's
Chuck,
good to
do
see
you have
everybody.
you too.
Yeah.
Do you have any
Mhm.
final thoughts on your amazing first pick?
Yeah, there's just a couple so Barris died in 2017 at age 87. He had a little daughter. He had a daughter named Della who was a teenager, I think, at the time the show ran, and she would occasionally pull the announcer gig where she'd come out, introducing my daddy, and
he's covering the Gong show, Briggy, by the way.
I'm sorry?
He's covering the Gong show from the 70s.
Okay.
I know, way before your time, but still.
Well, introducing my daddy, I was like, that sounds a little interesting. I'd like to hear more about that. But yeah.
But yeah,
moving on.
sadly died of an alcohol and cocaine related overdose in 1998. At the time, I guess she was HIV positive. So
wow.
Died 20 years before her dad.
Wow.
Yeah. So kind of a very tragic note there, but that's most of what I have on the show.
I can't imagine it'd be totally healthy growing up with Barris as your dad. I could be wrong.
No. I mean, yeah.
He could have been a lovable weirdo, or he could have been the other kind of weirdo.
Yeah. Or he could have been a secret agent.
Which makes him the worst kind of weirdo.
There was rumors about that he was working for, I heard that. Is that the guy who was always clapping in between each thing, kind of clap? It was like a weird clap thing he used to do.
Yeah.
I would say the odds are that was part of his delusion, but who knows? CIA, they're not going to confirm or deny.
They'll hire just about anybody if you do what they want you to do. Sometimes the more 100%. Off the wall you are, the more chance they'll hire you. And I'm not cracking any jokes here at all either. So thank you, Chuck. That was a beautiful presentation to you. And so it's that's what I like. Let's go deep. So in order to do that, could you guys please like and subscribe? And we want to try to grow the channel. We're getting near 500 subscribers. Drop a like, help us fight the algorithms. And without any further ado, I'd like to turn to Mr. Justin Cotton.
All right, guys. Hang on a tick.
You still with us?
I'm still with you. Yes. All right. Yeah. Okay. No worries. So we sort of touched on it last week. I did mention the show in passing, even though it wasn't one of the two that I discussed. But I thought I'd do a British show, which is comedy sitcom, which has sort of stood the test of time over many decades, called FAWLTY Towers, FAWLTY. About a hotel.
I love that show, by the way. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
FAWLTY Towers is
get
amazing.
Feedback.
I'm sorry, it's so good. I'm sorry to break it.
People won't know it in the US, and you realize, but it's set in Torquay, which is in the south coast of England in the 70s, and when it's made, and it was, I think, the 13 episodes in all, because they decided to finish before the show got stale in terms of plot lines. So the first series, it was 2 series. One was 6 episodes in 1976, and then they had a couple of years break, and then they did the second series was 7 episodes in 1979. So it's obviously the star of the show and principal writer is John Cleese from Monty Python. And he's supposed to be only about 40 years old, but he to me, he looks a lot older than that in the show. But he's like this manic, maybe it's stress, but he's got this manic, he's a manic hotel proprietor, and his wife, played by Prunella Scales, Sybil. And the sort of quite attractive maid is Polly, played by Connie Booth, who's American, but also at the time was John Cleese's wife, but also one of the 2 writers with John Cleese of the plot, the storylines. And there's lots of oddball characters apart from obviously John Cleese as Basil Fawlty. There's an old major from the army who's about, well, it looks like he's about pushing 90. He's about 85 or so, but he thinks he's still, because he's got Alzheimer's or dementia. He thinks he's still back in the Second World War. So there's lots of riffs on that theme, where one scene he walks through the hotel with a shotgun because he's seen a rat in the bar, and he next thing you know, people are talking and they hear these gunshots coming from the hotel bar, and it's because the major's seen a rat on the near the drinks on the bar.
Can you fill in our viewers who may have not caught our last episode about Soap, about that character is then Soap is a pastiche of this character you're discussing?
Yeah, well, there's a character in Soap which I haven't seen, but which we talked about last week. I think you did, Henry, and also called the Major. Yeah. I think he's a major or a colonel. But anyway, he sounded very much like he'd been copied from the Major in FAWLTY Towers, because I suppose the soap writers might have seen FAWLTY Towers and said, "Oh, that character would be good." And the similarities were that they both had dementia and thought they were still back in the last major military conflict. So the Major's a particularly good character, but he's in the current council culture age, there's been talk of censoring scenes of FAWLTY Towers because of some of his racial views. But John Cleese has said on Twitter and so forth, it's a bit ridiculous because no one's glorifying the Major's views. It's supposed to be making the Major as a figure of fun because of his racism towards West Indians and Indians. And so he's and also homosexuals. He's kind of a figure of fun, and so if anything, they're lampooning those views. But he's one offbeat character, and then there's the butler from Barcelona called the head waiter from Barcelona called Manuel, who speaks only pidgin English, as Basil Fawlty puts it. And there's lots of jokes on that and sort of minor assaults committed by Basil Fawlty on Manuel. It's amazing in terms of some of the storylines they get in the episodes. Some of my favorites or highlights include the hotel inspector, which is the final episode, where there's a rat goes stray, which is Manuel's pet rat, goes stray in the hotel at the same time or same weekend when there's hotel inspectors staying at the hotel.
Of course.
And then there's the Germans episode where
my favorite.
Where Basil Fawlty suffered a concussion from a moose head landing on his head, has to go to hospital, and when he comes back from the hospital, he's suffering from concussion, and this German guest who he kind of lampoons, unintentionally lampoons, and keeps mentioning the Second World War. There's a psychiatrist episode's a favorite, where there's 2 psychiatrists, husband and wife, middle-aged, staying in the hotel, and they keep walking in on Basil Fawlty doing crazy things, trying to spy on this other hotel guest who has a woman staying in his room. And being a very old conservative sort of character, Fawlty has got a rule where you can't share a room unless you're married. So that's the side. There's usually some sort of side plot, and that's the side plot in that episode. But the psychiatrists tend to walk in whenever Fawlty's doing something crazy, like trying to check the walls to see if he can hear anything in the next room. another good one was the deaf lady who comes to stay, who's a bit of an old battle axe. She's got a hearing aid which she refuses to turn on, and she complains incessantly about her room and the service, and that's one of the recurring themes in this series is complaining guests actually. And the fact they get treated very rudely by Basil Fawlty, or if there's someone of any kind of note, or Fawlty thinks they're of any kind of note, he kind of switches and becomes a fawning, becomes very obsequious towards them. So the Deaf Lady one was good. And a lot of these, by the way, a lot of these funny scenes you can just look up on YouTube and just watch a 3-minute scene, like his encounter with the Deaf Lady when she's complaining about her room is particularly good. There's another one with an American tourist staying. There's one of these American actors who lived in the UK for decades and shows up on James Bond films at the time with Roger Moore and so forth. I don't know his name, but he's very good as this complaining guest with a British wife and demands a Waldorf salad. And Basil Fawlty's never heard of a Waldorf salad, so doesn't know how you make it. But unfortunately, the chef had refused to work late and had left. So Fawlty's pretending that the chef is still there in the kitchen when he's not, but it's actually Fawlty who's trying to put this meal together for the American guest, even though he accepted money from the American guest to pay the chef to stay on. But then he said, I'll take the money and you can go to your karate class. And so he lets the chef go and then pretends to prepare the meal. So that's a particularly good episode as well. I won't tell you what happens, but if you can get hold of that episode, that's one of the highlights. And then
how can people get hold of these, Justin, other than buying them? Like, is there a streaming place we can see them? I haven't caught up.
Well, I'm sure there is, but I'm not very knowledgeable. I mean, back in the day, I had a DVD. I've still got it somewhere of Fawlty Towers because it's only 13 episodes. But if you just watch snippets, which is not as good, obviously, you can do that on YouTube. But look, I'm sure you can. I would just sort of Google it to find out.
Okay.
And the final episode was the one with the hotel inspector with the so-called Siberian hamster, which Manuel has been sold. Someone sold him a Siberian hamster, and Fawlty says there's no such thing. That's actually a rat. And of course, the large rat gets free somehow and is loose in the hotel, and ends up in a biscuit tin, which is given to the hotel inspector in the final scene. And the next thing you know, Basil Fawlty's fainted and he's being carried out of the dining room. And that's when the final episode closes. So I think the undertone was that the hotel was about to be closed down by the hotel inspectors after the rat episode. So that was a very funny episode to finish on. But so John Cleese is fantastic in it, particularly when he goes off on rants and raves. It's particularly funny. Right from when I was about 15 or so, I've always enjoyed the show because it was reruns, even though it was in the late 70s. It was always rerun on New Zealand TV constantly, and I think Australian TV as well. Just not recently, but I'm sure you can probably get hold of it via a streaming service somehow. And I know some of you.
Yeah, I just looked it up. Yeah, I just looked it up, and it's currently, at least in the U.S., not streaming anywhere. So if you got to do it, you'll have to either wait for it to pop up on your local PBS on a rerun or buy the DVDs.
Which you think would be on
we have this thing called BritBox, which shows British TV. So if you've got like BBC America, maybe it's rerun on that. I don't know, but I think there is such a channel. But not sure. I think it's pretty low profile.
There's a British there is a British comedy channel.
I believe I saw that like on oh goodness, Prime. Prime then will have other streaming services. So they have something called like BBC Select or something to that effect.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Or they do they have like their murder mysteries. You guys Brits are very big on the murder mystery thing. I love that. But then also they have a lot of comedies and stuff like that. So I think it was on BBC Select.
Yeah, it looks like BritBox had Fawlty Towers, and then about a year ago, it just disappeared off of there.
Yeah, that's where I believe I saw it. So
so in the U.S., right now it's just currently unavailable. That might change.
Yeah.
Maybe it was too offensive for people. Who knows?
Too much to handle.
It's too much.
Yeah, it's not that PC, but
yeah.
But
I would say I would add one thing that's just an interesting sidebar to it is that there wasn't a failed American pilot that tried to do at the time, I think like 79 or 80, where they attempted to do an American version with Harvey Korman as the Basil Fawlty character. And they essentially just took the original script from that first episode and Americanized it and did it almost word for word. And it does not work at all. It's just really, it's funny how you just get a different actor in a different context and it just does not work. Harvey Korman's great, but he's terrible as in that part.
Yeah, I heard that the
conversely,
US adaptation,
wow.
What'd you say?
Yeah, I heard it didn't work in America in terms of the adaptation, but I also went to a stage show about 10 years ago. We went FAWLTY Towers stage show in Melbourne, and although it was funny, it was a bit like deja vu because they just incorporated some of the key episodes and pretty much the same lines, which I kind of know, I know before they're said. I know the show so well, so so it was
essence of a
it wasn't as good. They really need to. It's almost like they need the original actors and writers and to come up with some more storylines, fresh storylines. But it's a bit difficult when the show was made back in the late 70s.
Yeah,
police could always write it and produce it and recast it.
Well, he was gonna do that with his daughter, but that project seems to be dead. But a couple of years ago, he was looking at doing like a new FAWLTY Towers thing with his working with his daughter. But haven't heard anything now for a while, so I'm guessing it's a dead project.
Wow.
Yeah.
We sold a lot of copies when I worked at Borders on DVD. That's for damn sure. It was what a
great store Borders was. Yeah.
Hi, this is Henry Covert, and this has been Deep Images. Hope you enjoyed today's segment, and we will be back soon to continue our discussion on Cult TV. Feel free to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for the ending credits and the beautiful music of Ghost of Day, and thank you for watching.